Dubai's morning sun cast diamonds across the Persian Gulf, transforming the city's glass towers into pillars of liquid gold. The skyline stretched endlessly, a testament to human ambition and excess where dreams were bought and sold like commodities in the world's most expensive marketplace. But beneath this glittering facade, in the shadows cast by towering skyscrapers, darker stories unfolded daily. Stories of power, betrayal, and sometimes murder. The ambulance sirens that would soon pierce this desert paradise remained silent for now, waiting for their moment to shatter the illusion of perfection that defined life among Dubai's elite expatriate community. Luigi Bianchi stood on the marble terrace of his Emirates Hills mansion, surveying his kingdom with the satisfaction of a man who had conquered the impossible. At 53, his silver hair caught the morning light like polished steel, while his cold blue eyes calculated the value of everything they surveyed. His Armani suit, perfectly tailored to his lean frame, spoke of wealth accumulated through 15 years of ruthless business dealings in a city that rewarded such ambition. The Patek Philippe on his wrist, worth more than most people's annual salaries, ticked away seconds that he owned as completely as he owned everything else in his meticulously crafted world. Money solves everything in this city, Habibi. He spoke into his gold-plated phone, his accented English carrying the confidence of a man who had never encountered a problem that couldn't be bought. Everything. Luigi's empire had been built on importing luxury automobiles to a clientele that viewed cars as jewelry. The bigger, more expensive, and more exclusive, the better. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Maseratis, all flowed through his dealerships like rivers of liquid metal, each transaction adding another layer to his fortress of wealth. He had arrived in Dubai as a moderately successful businessman from Milan. He had become something approaching royalty in a city that worshipped success above all else. His gaze drifted across the manicured gardens below, where Filipino workers tended to grass that required daily watering to survive in the desert climate. Everything in Dubai was artificial, maintained through sheer force of will and unlimited resources. It was a philosophy that Luigi had embraced completely. If you had enough money, you could make anything flourish, even in the most hostile environment. 20 kilometers away, in a modest apartment building in Al Karama, Evelyn Rosario was preparing for what she hoped would be the opportunity of a lifetime. At 21, she possessed the kind of natural beauty that turned heads on the street, warm brown eyes that sparkled with intelligence and compassion, an infectious smile that made children trust her instantly. But it was her mind, not her appearance, that she valued most. Her psychology textbooks lay scattered across a small desk, margins filled with notes about autism spectrum disorders and therapeutic intervention techniques. Evelyn had arrived in Dubai 6 months earlier with dreams as vast as the desert itself. Unlike many young women who came to the Emirates seeking wealthy husbands or glamorous careers in hospitality, she had a specific mission: to earn enough money working with special needs children to eventually open her own therapy center back in the Dominican Republic. Every dirham she saved brought her closer to that goal, even as she sent half her earnings home to support her grandmother and younger siblings. Her modest wardrobe consisted of practical clothes chosen for durability rather than fashion, though she wore them with a natural grace that suggested an inner confidence unburdened by material concerns. The handmade jewelry she favored, gifts from her grandmother, carried more sentimental value than all of Luigi's expensive accessories combined. She was, in every way, the antithesis of the gold-obsessed culture that dominated Dubai's social hierarchy. The job advertisement for a specialized nanny had appeared like an answered prayer. A wealthy family needed someone to care for their autistic daughter. Exactly the kind of work Evelyn was trained for and passionate about. The salary offered was more than double what she currently earned at the local therapy center, enough to accelerate her timeline for returning home and starting her dream project. In the same city, but inhabiting an entirely different world, Amira Bianchi moved through her morning routine with the practiced grace of a woman who had learned to find peace within carefully constructed boundaries. At 44, she remained strikingly beautiful in the manner of women who had never needed to work for their comfort but had paid for it in other ways. Her Jordanian heritage showed in her elegant bone structure and the way she carried herself, always perfectly composed, never allowing the cracks in her facade to show. Her marriage to Luigi had been arranged 12 years earlier by families who valued financial stability over romantic love. She had been 22, educated but sheltered, when she moved to Dubai to become the wife of an ambitious Italian businessman. The early years had been pleasant enough. Luigi could be charming when it suited his purposes, and the luxury of their lifestyle had initially dazzled her. The birth of their daughter Sophia had brought genuine joy, even as it revealed challenges that tested both parents in unexpected ways. Sophia's autism diagnosis had arrived when she was 3, transforming Amira from a decorative wife into a fierce advocate for her daughter's needs. She had educated herself about the condition, researched therapies, and created a support network among other special needs parents in the expatriate community. It was work that gave her life meaning beyond the endless cycle of charity galas and shopping expeditions that occupied most wives in their social circle. But with time, Amira had also become aware of Luigi's affairs. Dubai's expatriate community was small enough that secrets rarely remained hidden for long, and her husband was neither discreet nor particularly careful about his indiscretions. She knew about the Russian model, the Lebanese television presenter, and the British flight attendant. Each affair followed the same pattern: expensive gifts, promises of a future together, and eventual abandonment when Luigi grew bored or the relationship became inconvenient. Amira's response had been to retreat further into her role as devoted mother while maintaining the appearance of a perfect marriage. Her culture had taught her that a woman's honor was tied to her family's reputation, and divorce would bring shame not only on herself but on Sophia as well. Better to endure indignity than to expose their private struggles to public scrutiny. As the morning sun climbed higher over Dubai's skyline, these 3 lives were about to intersect in ways that none of them could have predicted. Luigi's arrogance would meet its match in Evelyn's integrity, while Amira's careful observations would become the foundation for understanding everything that followed. In Sophia, they would find both the catalyst for their connection and the innocent witness to its devastating consequences. The stage was set for a tragedy that would expose the fragility of Dubai's perfect facade and reveal how quickly paradise could transform into something far darker. The ambulance sirens remained silent, but not for much longer. 3 months into Evelyn's employment, Luigi's interest in the young nanny had evolved beyond professional appreciation. Sophia's remarkable progress provided convenient justification for his growing attention, but his motivations had shifted into dangerous territory. The opportunity presented itself when Amira announced her trip to Jordan, 2 weeks away, leaving Luigi alone with Sophia and the woman whose presence had begun to consume his thoughts in ways that went far beyond her therapeutic abilities. On the 3rd evening of Amira's absence, Luigi cornered Evelyn in the playroom after Sophia's bedtime routine. Gone was his usual business attire, replaced by casual clothes that made him appear less intimidating, more approachable. "Join me for dinner," he said, his tone making clear this wasn't a request. "We should discuss Sophia's progress." The dining room had been transformed, candles replacing harsh lighting, expensive wine opened, the formal atmosphere replaced by calculated intimacy. Evelyn accepted reluctantly, recognizing that refusal would be professionally dangerous. Luigi possessed the predator's instinct for identifying vulnerability. As conversation moved from Sophia's development to Evelyn's personal struggles, he listened with focused intensity to her stories of financial hardship, family obligations, and dreams that seemed impossibly distant. "Talent like yours shouldn't be limited by money," he said, his blue eyes fixed on her face. "Perhaps I could help make your dreams achievable." The gifts began the following week. A gold bracelet presented as recognition for her work. When Evelyn protested it was inappropriate, Luigi dismissed her concerns with practiced manipulation. "In Dubai, appreciation is measured in gold. You deserve proper recognition." What followed was systematic grooming disguised as mentorship. Expensive perfume became necessary for her professional image. A smartphone was essential for communication. Designer accessories were appropriate for Dubai's social expectations. Each gift came with plausible justification and gentle pressure that made resistance seem ungrateful. Physical advances began strategically, hands lingering on her shoulders, standing unnecessarily close during discussions, touches that tested boundaries while maintaining professional pretense. Luigi shared calculated personal revelations. Loneliness in his arranged marriage, admiration for her authenticity, hints at the isolation wealth created. Evelyn's resistance crumbled gradually. Luigi represented opportunities she had never imagined, validation after years of financial struggle. When he kissed her 6 weeks after Amira's return, it felt inevitable rather than shocking. Amira's homecoming brought immediate confirmation of her suspicions. Sophia's innocent chatter about new jewelry and increased paternal attention painted an unmistakable picture. Luigi's improved mood and avoidance of her gaze confirmed what she had dreaded but expected. Cultural conditioning prevented direct confrontation. Public scandal would destroy Sophia's stability and expose their family's failures to Dubai's judgment. Instead, Amira began documenting everything with methodical precision, preparing for uncertain times ahead. Evelyn sought comfort in Dubai's Latin American community, where domestic workers gathered weekly in Kerma's modest venues. These women became her connection to home and harsh reality. Carmen Rodriguez, a Colombian maid with 8 years' experience, noted the expensive accessories now accompanying Evelyn's modest clothing. "Rich men here collect women like cars," she warned. "They promise everything but deliver only heartbreak." But Evelyn's situation felt different. Luigi spoke of partnership, funding her therapy center, building a future together. When he secured her an apartment in Dubai Marina, presenting it as necessary for independence and discretion, she interpreted it as validation. The luxury apartment overwhelmed her. Floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, appliances from magazines. Luigi framed it as investment in her comfort, but Evelyn saw proof of her importance in his life. Their relationship intensified through winter months, conducted in stolen hours and late Marina evenings. Luigi proved skilled at maintaining romantic illusions while avoiding concrete commitments. His secretive phone calls, insistence on discretion, reluctance to discuss long-term plans suggested Evelyn occupied a different category than she realized. Warning signs accumulated like gathering storms. His secrecy supposedly protected Sophia. His vague promises about the future reflected complex obligations. His expensive gifts demonstrated appreciation, not control. Evelyn chose charitable interpretations over uncomfortable truths. The Latin community watched her transformation with growing alarm. Modest clothing replaced by designer pieces Luigi claimed were professionally necessary. Natural warmth overlaid with anxiety about maintaining his approval. Dreams of returning home postponed indefinitely while his promises remained frustratingly vague. By March, Dubai's brief respite had surrendered to approaching summer heat. The city's perfect facade masked ugly realities: power exploiting vulnerability, wealth corrupting relationships, desperate people making destructive choices. On a humid morning with temperatures climbing toward unbearable, Evelyn discovered her pregnancy. Staring at test results in her marble bathroom, she confronted collision of deepest fears and cherished hopes. The pregnancy represented potential disaster and unexpected blessing. It would force Luigi to confront their relationship's reality while offering possibilities of family she had dreamed about since childhood. As she contemplated the undeniable results, Evelyn made the decision that would trigger tragic events to follow. She would tell Luigi that evening, confident their connection could overcome any obstacle. She had no understanding of how men like Luigi Bianchi dealt with inconvenient complications, or how quickly manipulation could transform into something far more lethal when it threatened carefully constructed lives in Dubai's golden paradise. The underwater restaurant Pier Chic floated like a jewel beneath Dubai's waves, its glass walls offering diners an ethereal view of marine life gliding through illuminated waters. Evelyn had chosen this venue carefully: romantic, private, worthy of the momentous announcement she planned to make. She arrived wearing the pearl earrings Luigi had given her the previous month, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed her dress and prepared to share news that would change both their lives forever. Luigi was already seated at their reserved table, his usual commanding presence slightly subdued. He had been distant for the past week, claiming business pressures and family obligations. Evelyn interpreted his mood as stress that her news would help alleviate, proof that their relationship had produced something beautiful and permanent. I have something wonderful to tell you, she began, her voice bright with anticipation. We're going to have a baby. The transformation in Luigi's face was immediate and terrifying. The mask of charm he had worn for months disintegrated, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. His blue eyes turned to ice as he processed the implications of her announcement. No, he said quietly, his voice carrying the finality of a death sentence. We are not going to have anything. You are going to fix this problem immediately. Evelyn felt the words hit her like physical blows. Fix it? Luigi, this is our child. This is a mistake, he interrupted, his Italian accent sharpening with barely controlled fury. You will terminate the pregnancy, accept a generous settlement, and return to your country. Tomorrow. The casual cruelty of his response shattered every romantic illusion Evelyn had maintained about their relationship. She saw him clearly for the first time, not as her salvation but as a predator who had used her youth and desperation against her. I won't kill my baby, she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I'm keeping this child, with or without your support, and Amira deserves to know the truth about what kind of man she's married to. Luigi's facade cracked completely. The charming businessman disappeared, replaced by something far more dangerous. You have no idea what you're threatening, he said, leaning forward with predatory intensity. In this city, I have power you cannot comprehend. But Evelyn had found her courage in the most unexpected place, the life growing within her. Then you'll learn what it means to face someone who has nothing left to lose. Their confrontation was interrupted by Luigi's phone. Amira's name appeared on the screen, and something in his wife's tone when he answered made his face grow even paler. We need to talk, Amira said in Arabic, her voice carrying across the restaurant's hushed atmosphere. All three of us. Tonight. The drive back to Emirates Hills occurred in suffocating silence. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat of Luigi's Ferrari, watching Dubai's glittering skyline blur past while contemplating how quickly her world had collapsed. Luigi's hands gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity, his jaw clenched in barely contained rage. Amira waited in the mansion's formal sitting room, surrounded by photographs and documents spread across the mahogany coffee table like evidence in a trial. She had traded her usual elegant attire for traditional Jordanian dress, as if drawing strength from her cultural heritage for the confrontation ahead. Sit down, both of you, she commanded with quiet authority that neither Luigi nor Evelyn dared challenge. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Luigi's careful deceptions. Amira had documented everything: credit card receipts from restaurants and jewelry stores, photographs of Luigi and Evelyn together, recordings of phone conversations she had captured through Sophia's therapy monitoring equipment. Her evidence painted an unmistakable picture of systematic infidelity and emotional manipulation. I have known about this affair for months, Amira said, her voice steady despite the pain evident in her eyes. I have watched my husband corrupt a young woman under our own roof while using our daughter's condition as justification for his presence. She turned to Evelyn with unexpected compassion. You are not the first, and you would not have been the last. But you are the first to carry consequences that cannot be easily dismissed. Amira's ultimatum was delivered with businesslike precision. Evelyn could accept a substantial financial settlement and return quietly to Dominican Republic, with ongoing support for the child but no public acknowledgement of Luigi's paternity. The alternative was facing the full weight of Luigi's legal and social connections in a city where unmarried pregnant foreign workers had few rights and fewer sympathies. Choose carefully, Amira concluded. Dubai is not kind to women who challenge powerful men. But Evelyn had found something stronger than fear in the solidarity of her community. Every Friday evening in Karama, she was surrounded by women who had faced similar choices and survived through collective support. Carmen Rodriguez and dozens of others had become her extended family, witnesses to her relationship with Luigi and guardians of her story. I won't be silenced, Evelyn declared. This community knows the truth, and they'll stand with me. Luigi's contempt for the domestic worker network proved to be a crucial miscalculation. He had never bothered to learn the names of the women who cleaned his offices and minded his business associates' children, never recognized their potential as witnesses or their power as a collective force. His next move revealed the depths of his desperation. A consultation with his Emirati lawyer, Khalid al-Mansouri, outlined the cultural and legal challenges Evelyn faced but also revealed something more sinister. Al-Mansouri, with the careful language of someone accustomed to wealthy clients' ugly problems, suggested that some situations required permanent solutions. Accidents happen to foreign workers, the lawyer said carefully. The authorities understand that Dubai's rapid development creates workplace hazards. A young woman living alone, perhaps struggling with depression over an unwanted pregnancy, might make unfortunate choices. The suggestion hung in the air like poison gas, transforming Luigi's anger into something far more deadly. The final confrontation came 3 days later in Evelyn's Marina apartment. She had armed herself with the knowledge Carmen's network had gathered about Luigi's business practices: tax evasion, customs fraud, connections to money laundering operations that kept Dubai's luxury car market flowing with questionable funds. "I know about the offshore accounts," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I know about the false customs declarations and the cash payments that never appear in your books. If something happens to me, all of that information goes to the authorities." Luigi's response was a smile that chilled her blood. "My dear Evelyn," he said softly, "you have learned too much for your own good." As he left her apartment that evening, Luigi Bianchi had made his choice. Evelyn Rosario had become a problem that money couldn't solve and intimidation couldn't silence. In his mind, she had transformed from a pleasant diversion into an existential threat to everything he had built in 15 years of careful corruption. The solution he contemplated would require precision, planning, and the kind of ruthless calculation that had built his empire. Within days, Evelyn would drink her last smoothie, never knowing that her attempt to claim justice had signed her own death warrant. The solution came to Luigi Bianchi in the sterile confines of his climate-controlled warehouse, surrounded by luxury vehicles worth millions of dirhams. Among his business connections were men who dealt in more than automobiles, importers who understood that Dubai's booming economy created opportunities for those willing to operate in gray areas. It was through these channels that Luigi had first learned about curare, a paralytic agent derived from South American plants that had fascinated him during his early dealings with Venezuelan suppliers. The research consumed 3 sleepless nights. Luigi scoured medical journals and toxicology reports with the obsessive focus he usually reserved for market analysis. Curare-based compounds were nearly undetectable in standard autopsies, their effects mimicking cardiac arrest or respiratory failure. More importantly, they degraded rapidly in the human body, leaving minimal forensic traces for investigators who might lack the sophistication to look for exotic plant toxins. Obtaining the compound required careful negotiation with a contact in Caracas, a man who had helped Luigi circumvent import regulations in his early years. The package arrived via diplomatic pouch, disguised as herbal supplements for a health-conscious client. The irony wasn't lost on Luigi. He would use nature itself to eliminate his most pressing problem. Meanwhile, Amira Bianchi struggled with an unexpected crisis of conscience. Her documentation of Luigi's affair had been motivated by self-preservation, but watching Evelyn's defiance awaken maternal instincts she hadn't anticipated. The young woman's pregnancy complicated everything, introducing an innocent life into their toxic equation. On Tuesday morning, as Sophia prepared for her therapy session, Amira made a desperate decision. She knelt beside her daughter, speaking in Arabic to ensure privacy. "Habibi, I need you to ask Evelyn something very important today," she said carefully. "Tell her she should go home. Can you remember that?" Sophia nodded solemnly, her autistic literalness making her the perfect messenger for coded warnings. But when the 8-year-old delivered the message that afternoon, Evelyn interpreted "go home" as encouragement to return to Dominican Republic, exactly what Luigi wanted her to do. The reconciliation call came Wednesday evening, Luigi's voice carefully modulated to convey wounded dignity rather than murderous intent. He had been thinking, he told Evelyn, about their conversation at Pier Chic. Perhaps he had reacted too hastily, allowed business concerns to override his heart. "I want to discuss our future properly," he said, his Italian accent lending romantic weight to calculated deception. "I've prepared something special for you, a health smoothie with acai berries and Dominican herbs, good for morning sickness, and a gesture of respect for your heritage. Evelyn's relief was audible through the phone. She had spent 3 days oscillating between heartbreak and determination, sustained only by Carmen's unwavering support and the Latin community's promise to stand witness to Luigi's crimes. His apparent change of heart felt like answered prayers. Thursday afternoon arrived with Dubai's merciless sun beating down on Marina's glass towers. Luigi appeared at Evelyn's apartment carrying an insulated bag containing the smoothie he had prepared with scientific precision. The acai berries masked any unusual taste while the curare worked silently beneath layers of tropical fruit and honey. Their conversation unfolded with surreal civility. Luigi had mastered the art of emotional manipulation over 15 years of business dealings, and he deployed every technique to maintain Evelyn's trust while ensuring she consumed every drop of the poison drink. "To our child's future," he said, raising his own glass of plain juice in a toast that chilled his blood even as he smiled. Evelyn drank gratefully, discussing nursery plans and baby names, while Luigi checked his watch with increasing frequency. He stayed exactly 47 minutes, long enough to seem genuinely invested in their conversation, short enough to establish clear temporal separation from what would follow. His business dinner at the Burj Al Arab provided an ironclad alibi, surrounded by potential investors and hotel staff who would remember his charm and apparent normalcy. As he discussed market expansion over Wagyu beef, Evelyn began experiencing the first symptoms of respiratory distress 23 floors above Marina's yacht-filled waters. Carmen Rodriguez's weekly check-in call went unanswered at 7 p.m. Concern turned to alarm when she found Evelyn's apartment door unlocked. Her friend collapsed on the marble floor with blue-tinged lips and labored breathing. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but curare had already begun its irreversible work on Evelyn's nervous system. The race to Dubai Hospital became a futile exercise in medical heroism. Emergency room physicians, trained to handle everything from construction accidents to luxury car crashes, found themselves battling an unknown enemy. Evelyn's vital signs fluctuated wildly before stabilizing at levels incompatible with life. She died at 11:47 p.m., surrounded by strangers in a city that had promised her dreams but delivered only exploitation and death. Luigi received the news with perfect composure, his reaction carefully calibrated to suggest shock rather than relief. He played the concerned employer flawlessly, expressing appropriate grief while maintaining emotional distance. His performance convinced hospital staff and police officers alike, a successful businessman mourning the tragic loss of his daughter's dedicated caregiver. Amira's response proved more complex. Relief at the elimination of her marriage's greatest threat mixed uncomfortably with unexpected grief for a young woman whose only crime had been believing Luigi's lies. She maintained public dignity while privately confronting the knowledge that her silence had contributed to Evelyn's fate. The Latin community's reaction was immediate and unanimous. Evelyn had been murdered. Carmen organized vigils and demanded investigations, but suspicion without evidence carried little weight in Dubai's expatriate hierarchy. Their collective voice, so powerful in providing support, seemed suddenly insignificant when confronting institutional indifference. Luigi's cleanup operation began before Evelyn's body reached the morgue. Gifts were retrieved and returned to their original boxes. The Marina apartment was professionally cleaned, its contents disposed of with methodical thoroughness. Digital communications were purged from servers, their electronic ghosts banished to technological oblivion. Khalid al-Mansouri, Luigi's lawyer, began crafting the narrative that would protect his client from inconvenient questions. Evelyn Rosario would be remembered as an unstable young woman, overwhelmed by an unwanted pregnancy and unable to cope with the pressures of expatriate life. Mental health struggles among domestic workers were sadly common, particularly when complicated by cultural isolation and financial stress. As Dubai's skyline glittered with another night's promise of endless possibility, Luigi Bianchi had successfully eliminated his most pressing problem. The smoothie glass had been washed and stored, its contents reduced to metabolic waste that would never tell their deadly story. But in a city built on the labor of invisible people, some deaths would not remain unexamined, and some voices would refuse to be silenced by wealth and influence. Detective Saeed Al-Mansouri had seen enough death in Dubai's glittering towers to recognize when money was trying to buy silence. The preliminary report on Evelyn Rosario's death suggested natural causes. Cardiac arrest in a young, healthy woman. But something in Carmen Rodriguez's tear-streaked testimony nagged at his investigative instincts. Al-Mansouri was that rarest of creatures in Dubai's power structure, a local investigator whom wealth could not corrupt. 20 years of police work had taught him that the city's most heinous crimes often hid behind its most beautiful facades. When the autopsy revealed traces of curare alkaloids in Evelyn's system, his suspicions crystallized into grim certainty. The exotic plant toxin transformed a routine death investigation into a murder case. Al-Mansouri was that rarest of creatures in Dubai's power structure, a local investigator whom wealth could not corrupt. 20 years of police work had taught him that the city's most heinous crimes often hid behind its most beautiful facades. When the autopsy revealed traces of curare alkaloids in Evelyn's system, his suspicions crystallized into grim certainty. The exotic plant toxin transformed a routine death investigation into a murder case. Al-Mansouri's team expanded rapidly, drawing expertise from international forensic specialists who confirmed what local pathologists had missed. Evelyn Rosario had been deliberately poisoned with a compound that required sophisticated knowledge to obtain and deploy. Carmen Rodriguez became the investigation's emotional center, her grief transforming into fierce determination to secure justice for her murdered friend. Through her network, Al-Mansouri gained access to Dubai's invisible domestic worker community. Women whose testimony painted a devastating picture of Luigi's predatory behavior and Evelyn's growing fear in her final weeks. She told us he had become different, Carmen testified, her English accented with both Spanish and Arabic after 8 years in Dubai. Cold, threatening. She was afraid but had nowhere to go. The community's collective voice proved impossible to dismiss. Dozens of witnesses corroborated details of the affair, the pregnancy, and Luigi's increasingly hostile reactions to Evelyn's refusal to disappear quietly. Their testimony represented everything Luigi had underestimated about the help, their solidarity, their careful observation of their employer's secrets, their willingness to stand together when one of their own was threatened. The investigation's turning point came when Luigi Bianchi requested a private meeting with Al-Mansouri. In a conference room overlooking Dubai Creek, she methodically presented months of documentation, photographs, recordings, financial records that proved Luigi's systematic deception and Evelyn's growing desperation. "I was protecting my daughter," Amira explained, her voice steady despite obvious emotional cost. "But I cannot protect a murderer." Her testimony, coming from Luigi's own wife, demolished his carefully constructed denials. The evidence she provided filled gaps in the prosecution's case while establishing clear motive for Luigi's actions. Khalid Al-Mansouri, Luigi's high-powered attorney, deployed every weapon in his considerable arsenal. He portrayed Evelyn as an unstable foreign worker who had manipulated a generous employer and ultimately taken her own life when her schemes collapsed. The defense relied heavily on cultural prejudices, presenting Luigi as the victim of a calculating woman who had used her pregnancy to extort money. But the prosecution's most powerful witness proved to be 8-year-old Sofia Bianchi. Her autism, which had initially seemed like a complication, became the key to exposing Luigi's lies. Sofia's literal interpretation of events and inability to construct falsehoods provided devastating testimony about the smoothie preparation and her father's strange behavior in the days before Evelyn's death. The case became a rallying point for Dubai's Latin American community, their demonstrations attracting international media attention that pressured local authorities to pursue justice vigorously. The Emirates' carefully cultivated image as a progressive business hub faced scrutiny as the world watched how they would treat the murder of a vulnerable foreign worker. Luigi's conviction came after a 3-week trial that captivated the region. His wealth and connections proved insufficient against the weight of evidence and community pressure. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment, noting that his abuse of power and systematic exploitation of a vulnerable woman represented the worst aspects of unchecked privilege. Luigi's business empire collapsed within months. Associates distanced themselves from a convicted murderer, while regulatory investigations revealed the tax evasion and customs fraud that Evelyn had threatened to expose. The man who had once commanded respect through fear and money became a cautionary tale about the ultimate price of absolute corruption. Amira used Luigi's seized assets to establish the Evelyn Rosario Foundation, providing legal support and protection for domestic workers throughout the UAE. Her transformation from silent victim to advocate represented a form of redemption that honored Evelyn's memory while protecting other vulnerable women. Carmen Rodriguez returned to Santo Domingo carrying Evelyn's story and a determination to prevent similar tragedies. Her testimony before the Dominican Parliament led to new legislation protecting overseas workers and establishing support networks for those facing exploitation abroad. The final image belonged to Sophia, now in Amira's full custody, playing in a therapy center named for the woman who had loved her unconditionally. As the camera pulled back to reveal Dubai's skyline, still beautiful, still gleaming, but forever changed, viewers were reminded that in a city built on dreams, some nightmares could be too real to ignore. Justice had been served in the desert, but at a cost that would resonate through generations of women who dared to dream of better lives in foreign lands.